You ever wondered why it seems so difficult for some black men to express their emotions openly? Why do we encounter the expectation of that real strength means staying silent and stoic? If these questions resonate with you, then you won't want to miss today's episode on the Hearts of Men podcast. So, welcome everybody. Today, we're diving deep into a critical and often overlooked issue, the myth of the strong silent type, and why it's essential for black men to break this silence. This conversation isn't just about identifying the problem, but also about uncovering the rich value of mature black men who lead with openness and honesty. We'll explore the historical roots of this stereotype, examine its devastating consequences on mental health, and highlight the transformative power of communication and relationships. We'll also shine a spotlight on the incredible role models in our community who are paving the way for a new, healthier narrative. This isn't just another talk, it's an invitation to join a movement where black men are encouraged to speak up, share with honesty, and connect more deeply with those around them. Whether you're a man struggling with these expectations, a partner wanting to understand better, or a community member looking to support this change, this discussion is for you. So stay tuned and get ready to be a part of a conversation that promises to be as enlightening as it is empowering. Don't miss out. Let's break the silence together. So, as always, and we're going to kind of try to do this in a conversation style, right? And so, that being said, I want everybody to understand on this platform, we consider ourselves to be subject matter experts of our own perspective, right? Everybody have their own thoughts, their own opinions, background, so forth and so on. So that said, let's honor and appreciate everybody's points of view, and let's just consider the rightness of it. Even if it isn't 100% right, let's try to see where it is right, if it is. Okay? So, gentlemen, I want to kind of start this conversation off real quick just by asking a very simple question. And this simple question is this: when you hear the phrase strong silent type, what does that mean to you? What come to your mind? What thoughts do you encounter?
Well, when I hear it, I think of it as a misconception. I think it's one of those phrases that's put out there as a positive, but in reality, because I've lived it, it's a negative because the strong silent type. People talk about like, oh, he can take anything, he can take everything, but yet they don't know what's going on the inside just because he masks his feelings well.
Mm.
Um, I get that. I'm gonna take a little bit of different spin on it. I think sometimes it means that um it's a perception of how men are supposed to be. I think some men says that, hey, I'm supposed to put my head down, drive forward, put some water on it, put some spit on it, and drink some water and keep it moving. And don't share my problems or the things that I'm going through with anybody. So that's what I think that some men think this means.
Um, Trying to figure out how to take the approach I want to take with it, but I want to kind of save the totality of what I want to say for later because I feel like you're gonna pull it out. Uh, but so with that said, I always think back on like why a lot of the men we got the older men whom we learned these behaviors from, right, or this idea from, why were they stoic? And I've always looked at it as they went through so much just to exist as black men, um, and had to learn how to endure it and keep driving on, how to continue to raise good men and deal with the stress and the pressures, how to love a woman and still deal with all they had to go through. All right. And I'm not in any way praising it. I'm saying the situational awareness is for the generation in which we grasp that idea from, right? But these are also the same generation of men who grasp the idea of they came home and started drinking too, right? They can they came home and they were distant or something just like we get that behavior and we praise that, but we also look at a lot of the bad behaviors that we take or we try to label on the black man from that generation as well. So
I'm going to ask you to turn up your mic just a little, or speak into the mic, Caroline, because it's a little hard to hear you. But I want everybody to be able to hear what you're saying, and I'm agreeing with everybody's perspective. I'm with Roland. I lived it as well. I think it is a kind of like a phrase of deception, automatically assuming that silence and strength go hand in hand. And that is, I mean, that couldn't be further from the truth. Silence has nothing to do with strength, although it sometimes takes strength to be silent. I think when you go back and look at a lot of things, I think what you have to conclude is that some men, and I've said this previously, that some men just picked and choose their battles. So unless somebody got their eye poked out, somebody leg them fall off or something of that nature, they ain't gonna really say a whole lot, because at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, they don't want to have to go back and forth and going through all of that. Frustration, I would say, going through the frustration of talking about everything. And I don't necessarily mean everything, because everything isn't worth talking about, but it may seem to their partner that they're talking about everything. So to avoid that, sometimes they stay silent. And I recall years ago, my ex grandfather-in-law, he would just sit in the corner, and we would go to the house and I would speak to him and things of that nature. And he was just sitting in the corner and he would speak back, and that was it. You wouldn't hear him speak no more for the rest of the day. And it was, and I would always question, like, why would he not say anything? Why was he not a functional part of conversations, things of that nature? Um, so I just started paying close attention. And I realized it wasn't just him, it's a lot of men out there, especially the older men, a lot of men out there who believe that silence is peace. As long as I keep silent, I can maintain the peace within my house. I'm not at turmoil or any frustrations with my particular mate. And I'm okay with that. And so, going back to what Roland said, I get it, because sometimes you just pick and choose your battles. Is that something I really want to talk about? Is that worth me getting involved with? Or I let her deal with that, or whatever that looks like. So that's just another perspective of this particular question. But thank you, gentlemen, for sharing that. Any other thoughts before we start pulling out some of this information out the chats?
Yeah, I think, I was kind of looking at it a different angle, even when you guys were sharing, and when you especially said it takes strength to be silent, because I think it does. I think it's okay to be silent about certain things, and not everything needs to be shared with everybody. I did a 30-day challenge last month or so, and my wife didn't know anything about it. The only person who knew about it was just me and my brother. You know what I mean? It was something that I was working on, so I think sometimes there is something to be said for being silent, to the grandfather and something like that. Sometimes um we have these phones now, so even when we're out in public, back in the day, we used to talk to people. We would be sitting in line, we'd be at the doctor or waiting in line at the pharmacy or something like that, and we would have conversations, or we would observe. So I've found myself sometimes, as gotten older, is sometimes just being in a place and just observing. And I know this is not what you were talking about. This is something totally different. I did want to mention that is that sometimes, there is some peace in being silent. I could imagine myself as being a great grandfather or something like that, and seeing all of my kids and just everybody want to soak it up. And like I said, this is not, to you know contradict anything that you were saying. I'm just speaking to another side of that,
Right.
and how that silent, what I mean, is a lot of strength in that, you know what I mean? Because you can kind of look back and like, these are my kids, my grandkids, my grandkids, and this is your legacy,
Right.
that you in front of you. And I think there's some value in that. But to to like that other side of it, I think, like you were saying, it does take some strength to be silent sometimes, and everything that we should say, or everything that comes to our head, we shouldn't necessarily say.
Well, so I like that. I like that perspective, and I'm gonna ask a question that kind of ties everything together. Is it possible? And this is just my thought. Is it possible to appreciate being around my grandkids, but still have a voice?
Absolutely.
That's kind of like my initial thoughts in that particular because I'm agreeing with you. Like you appreciate, like every time I see my grandson, my face lights up. I feel like I'm a kid again, and I want to get out there and play with him. Like I ain't got that kind of energy, bro. I'm gonna be
Yeah.
honest with you though. But I want to get out there and play with him and all kind of other stuff of that nature. But I also say things in relation to his behavior, and I think
Mhm.
it's kind of like what we're talking about. So so the follow-on question to that, in your opinions, for a person to sit in silence and allow things to just happen, right? Don't necessarily say anything about this, even though they see certain things that they don't necessarily agree with. Could that be like indicative of something else? And if so, in your thoughts, what could that something else be?
I think that's a deep one. I don't know if you guys remember the movie with Michael Douglas called Falling Down, where he worked at a business and he shirt and tie every day. He had problems at home where his wife was about to leave him and everything. Then he went to work and he just snapped because he would never say anything. Everything happened. He just took it on the chin and like, okay, okay. And then he was in traffic and the guy was blowing his horn and everything. And he just snapped and went on this whole spree and everything. That's how it is sometimes. Sometimes if you sit there and just take it on the chin all the time and bottle it up and it has nowhere to go, eventually it has to go somewhere. And whether it be you are abusive to your family or people at work or whomever it is, coming at home and just kick the dog or whatever, it's going to go somewhere. And that's why it's a must that we have an outlet.
Yeah, I definitely think it could be indicative of something else. As a senior man in the family, I think that it's important that at some point we get we get to the level to where we're giving back information, where we're sharing some of our lessons learned. And I think that, if a person, that senior in that family is not sharing, or just sitting in silence, it does cause, question as to why not. I mean, why is this person not engaged? Yes, sit back and observe and stuff like this, but I do agree that I think that it definitely could be indicative of something. I don't know what it is. I wasn't raised with grandparents. Both of my biological grandparents were gone before I was born. And then my grandmother had remarried, but um he was, I knew him, but I didn't see a lot of the dynamics of, imparting into grandkids and different things like that. He was the step granddad. I don't say that in a negative way, but he was the person my grandma married, later on in life. So I don't know where it comes from.
I'm glad I didn't say what I wanted to say in the beginning because I think this question, I know you're gonna jump right to it, but no, it's when I see the silent but strong type, I believe for a lot of the reason is survival mode, self preservation, right? Um, that's why I said I look at the generation of which we know to be the most stoic, uh, and what they've had to what they had to go to. How much of that history we've learned out of the textbook because of the times it lived and how many movies was made from that generation, right? The reality is they were in survival mode, and so when I see it today, the question is, what are they surviving? What they're silent to avoid what? I remember the movie uh uh the Great Debaters. Remember that movie? I remember the part when Forrest Whitaker they hit the pig, and you could tell he wanted to say so much, and he wanted to react so bad when they made him sign over his entire paycheck. Um, but when he looked back in the car, he saw his family, so he stayed silent so that the family can survive. that is what some men are actually going through, and nobody in the house ever asked the question, is he surviving me? Am I what he's surviving? Is there space in his own home for him to have an opinion without him to be cut off, cut down? Is there space for him in his own within his own family for him to have a voice and not be challenged every time? Why is it that that to be stoic is what he has to do to be strong in this house? And so for me, I look at it and say it's survival mode.
I'm liking the survival mode thing. I really am. Go ahead, bro. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going. I think sometimes I can speak from personal experience where I felt my voice wasn't valued, or I was going to meet friction. It's going to be another argument. Sometimes we get into situations where we'd rather not deal with what could happen, so we just take it on the chin and be quiet. We just throw up our hands and say, "Okay, it is what it is."
I agree. And I think that I think a lot of that is comes from the suppression, to where, and I don't want to use the term fear, but it's the second and third order effects that go along with the possibility of particular conversations, right? And so what ends up happening is that some people, they tend to suppress what they're really thinking and what they're really saying for the sake of quote unquote peace, but you don't have peace within, right? You going through some internal conflict because you're thinking and feeling a particular type of way, but then you never let it out because at the end of the day, you don't want to cause conflict. So you feel like what you're going to say is going to cause conflict, and that by itself becomes a problem. So you just don't ever venture in that category. So greatly appreciate your guys' response. Yes,
I have a question.
sure.
Why? Excuse me. Do we get? Are we going to get to why men are silent in the first place?
Sure. We can get to it right now if you want to.
Okay, because I think that's important. Sometimes we have conversations and we start with the definition.
Mhm.
We're talking about men being silent. So I want to know, you guys' opinion. Why do y'all think men are being silent or feel like they have to be silent in the first place?
Well, I guess I'll start with this one because I kind of started down that path. It is the intentional avoidance of confusion because they feel to express how they really feel and what they're really thinking will stir up a hornet's nest within the house. And then they got to deal with the secondary and tertiary effects of that. If they say what they're really thinking, if they really try to, and I'm gonna say this loosely, if they really try to instill some type of order and peace within the realm of the home, then it's deemed as being too masculine, or whatever that looks like. um and I get it. It's not a, and as we say this, I want to make sure that we give um credit to the fact that these things happen, but it's not that they're trying to be demanding, forceful, or misogynistic. It's just that in their own homes they see things are being done wrong, or done in a way to where it can be done better. I say it that way. Like case in point, I give you a perfect example. If there's a boy child in the house, and the husband feels like that boy child is being coddled too much, but then when they go to say something about it, then it's like, well, that's my son, and blah blah blah, and this, that, and the third. Well, it's our child, right? It's not just your son or my son; it's our child. And so, at the end of the day, men generally train boys, and women train girls. Men nurture daughters, and women, they nurture sons. So we're not saying it not to nurture them. We're just saying that too much of this thing, without them getting the lesson that they need to get at this particular point in time, can cause some type of prolonged entitlement, dependency, whatever that looks like. And so I think, to my point, I think a lot of that is done to avoid all of the, and I say it's unnecessariness, but all of the unnecessariness to go along with it. So I yield the floor to the distinguished gentleman below me.
I think we're treading carefully on on this one, and it's just my perspective. And even me just now, because I'm like, how do I say this without? Because I don't want to lose nobody.
But see, this is the problem. Even right here, you're tiptoeing, like you're almost like
exactly
like silencing yourself right now. So like this is
trying
why I wanted to
figure
know,
out
like, why are we been silent in the first? We should be able to say what we need to say.
because it's our let's be real, it's our cultural bring up nowadays, right? We're not brought up in a culture with a strong male presence, right? Either they're not there or they're not allowed to be there, right? Whatever the case, whatever argument you want to make for it, both are true at the same time, right? And so because of that, the only authority figure that most of us know is mama, especially in the home. And so when we know that we're going to meet friction or the other party is not going to agree, we have a part of it, and this is just a part of it. I don't believe it's the whole answer, but a part of it is we we take on to the way we were nurtured, right? And we begin to backtrack because we don't want mama to feel overran. And we have this idea because we've been told by mama to how to treat a lady, how to make her feel. And the moment we tell her she ain't doing it right, we just went against mama because she don't feel happy because we didn't tell her she did everything right. And this is a lot of our reality. A lot of us tiptoe around the women we call wife, girlfriend, whatever it is, because we it, we have been trained this way. So silent and stoic is how, like Coach said earlier, it's how we keep peace. But then later on, we realize we never had a voice in our own home and in our own family. But I think that's just a part of it.
Yeah, it's just a part. It's many parts. It could be, sometimes we can be viewed as, they say toxic masculinity, which masculinity cannot be toxic. It is what it is. And whether you like it or not, that's your problem, not the person that's being masculine. But I think a lot of times within the home, it can be communication, because just because a person knows how to talk doesn't mean they know how to talk to you. Doesn't mean that you two know how to talk so that a conversation can be had. So when you're having a conversation or you're trying to get a point across, they're hearing one thing and you're trying to convey another. And then next thing you know, one of you shut down or one of you get loud. So that means the man just gonna say, in his mind, he gonna say, F it, forget it. I ain't gonna deal with it. I'm gonna go in here and watch ESPN. I'm not, because in order to not deal with the friction, not deal with the strife, the man sometimes, because he knows his next step is battle. His next step is physicality. So instead of going there, because when I always told my kids this, if I'm talking to you and you talking to me, if you raise your voice and I'm raising my voice, that's an argument, and I don't argue with kids because that puts us at a combative stance. And that should be that way with anyone, because if we're raising our voices, that's combat. If we can't talk and communicate, that means one of us need to go away where we can come back and actually have a conversation, because once you go up there, I'm not listening to you.
But even with that, I'm gonna give it to you in a second, Gary. But even with that, isn't that the easy button?
Sometimes it is.
If we just hit communication, isn't that the easy button? Because all of this is communication. This entire conversation is about communication. And I think sometimes society will say, oh, well, they have communication problems. Yeah, what does that really mean? Like, okay, everybody communicates, everything communicates, whether you believe it or not. But what is really the problem? And I think that's where Uncle Junior was going with this, and I agree with him 100%. And he wanted to put it out. I was going to get to it, but let's get to it right now. Like, to just say, and I'm not talking about your statement, Roland, but if we as a collective just say it's a communication issue, no one ever learns their lesson. No one ever learned where they failed in communication. No one ever learned, like, if I'm just being completely transparent, we should have understood the communication issue out the gate.
Should
You got to let the honeymoon stay go by. Once that passed by, now the truth comes out, and I see that you was only putting on the facade, or I was only putting on the facade up for but so long. But once all of that wear off, the truth comes out. No, I don't want to. I don't want to ride this roller coaster.
So then it goes to control. I can't control the situation. I can't control her. She can't. She's trying to control me. So I see it as a control thing, where one person feels they're losing control, and then the other person is gonna go where.
I think you said the other person gonna go wherever they want to go. Okay, gotcha.
Okay, I thought it was me for a second. I was like, not again. Nah. Man, Coach, you said something that kind of like not off track me, but refocused me. But to stay on the why, we have become addicted, and this is probably when I'm gonna get unfollowed by nah, I know it's all in love. But we've become addicted to the narrative of the strong black woman is the angry black woman, right? And so, and by we, I mean on both sides, the man and the woman, because the man, we have accepted it, and the women have adopted it a lot of times. Not all, but a lot of times. And so, because of that, that's when we process what we're about to say, we imagine the all of that stuff we put on TikTok to be funny, but that's what we process in our head getting ready to happen. And for most men, we avoid all of that because one, you're not going to let me speak because you're not going to shut up probably for the next 30 minutes, right? And secondly, everything I say from here on, because you're not happy with the direction I'm taking the conversation, you're not going to receive it anyway, right? And this is how we're processing it, right? I'm not saying whether or not, chat, if you believe that I'm telling the truth or not, but this is how a lot of us process it. And so we like, nope, not going to do it. And then but if we do go back and forth, it becomes a yelling match. Because the only way I'm heard is if I speak as loudly as you're speaking. And so exactly, I got to keep matching your level. And as Roland brought up earlier, as men, the only next step after screaming is where we're not going to go. So a lot of men, when they get into these arguments, when your man get up and walk out, it's because there's only one other way we know how to go when our temperature gets that high. And we're not going to go there with you, so we'll walk away. And a lot of women know that a lot of men are not going to go to the physical with them. So they can continue to take it to the next level, to where the man has no choice but just to shut down because he can't handle you like he will handle another man that's screaming at him like a child.
Is it just me, or does anybody else want to see Gaddy do that demonstration again? I mean, I thought that was pretty awesome. Like that's the finger popping, the hand clap. That was pretty good, bro. Yeah, go ahead, bro.
From everything that I've heard, I appreciate everybody's response, but it seems like to me what I've gathered from that is that the reason why men are silent is because the person that they're trying to convey the information to has a problem or has an issue with the information. Instead of them seeing it as, hey, this person is coming to me with an issue, they take it personally or get in their feelings, and then it becomes an issue. So the men feel like, hey, every time I come to you to try to fix something in our relationship, because remember, over here on Empowering Perspective Podcast and Hearts Men Podcast, the relationship is the most important person in a relationship. So if I say something to you and you automatically get defensive or in your feelings, that's where the problem is. But that's the reason why men, from what everybody has been saying, are being silent. So at some point we have to figure out why we can't have this conversation without the other person getting automatically defensive. And maybe we'll get to it sometime today. But I just wanted to say I appreciate everybody for answering my question. I really appreciate it.
Because they didn't know they had a voice. Think about it. And this is where I'm going to go back to a lot of this that you're talking about, and I understand you said you used the term problem. I'm a rephrase that just a little
Yeah,
bit.
please do, please do.
I don't want to say problem. I say conditioning, right? It's a conditioning to where there was a narrative put in place, and that narrative became the backstop of behavior that took place in the household, and that behavior has then become the norm. And therefore, in order for that man, and again, it's not 100% across the board, but in order for that man to have a happy house, I'm sorry, yeah, no, in order for that man to have a happy life, he got to have a happy wife. So in order for him to keep his wife happy, he got to combat the things that she say a whole lot less than he really wants to, even though some of the things that he think that she may be doing, thinking, or doing, or whatever, is not accurate, unless it causes like a severe detriment to the family, the finances, or whatever. He just elects not to say anything. So that is kind of like my summed up response, because I'm agreeing with what you're saying, the summation of what everybody else is saying, but I think it's probably more so along the lines of, because think about it. I never heard when I was growing up that the relationship is the most important person in the relationship. No one ever said that. So as a young man, I did not know that. And so at the end of the day, I'm standing there with my ex-wife, and we having conversation. I don't have to agree to what you're saying. I don't even have to own how you're feeling. Those are your feelings. I understand that you feel this particular type of way. Thank you for sharing that. But still yet, this is the best thing for the family. So we're going to march forward with this plan. And at the end of the day, I'm sorry that it doesn't sit right with you, but this is what we going to do. And that's just one situation, but but just like my thoughts.
Yeah, appreciate everything. But it's funny how on our job, our boss can come to us and say, or come to other people and say, "Hey, look, you're not cutting the mustard. You need to fix it." And people say, "Oh, okay, yeah, no problem. I'll get right on it, boss." Like just like that. And I think like for a lot of men, if it was like that in their home, it'd be a lot more communication. If I was like, "Hey, look, you know what I mean? I know we talked about, I don't know, the washing the dishes or something like that." Well, it seemed like the reception should be okay. Yeah, we did talk about that. Yeah, I'm gonna get back on that. I just slacked off a little bit, right? Because it's about the relationship and about the agreement that we had, not about you feeling some kind of way because you didn't slacked off doing what you said you was going to do in the first place. But I get everything, man. This it seems like it's a lot of conflict avoidance is what big word conflict avoidance. So
That's exactly what it is. Okay, let's kind of see what's going on in the chats, because they was putting some stuff up in there, and we is ready for it. So let's start at the top. I think the first one is Lisa. Throughout history, men were often expected to endure silence and abuse at the hands of slave masters. This damaging notion of strength through silence has been perpetuated across generations. Absolutely. Thank you for that, Lisa, because she is spot on. And that kind of goes back to the conditioning piece, right? Being strong and silent is not a badge of honor or a reward. This unhealthy mindset must be challenged and replaced with truth and understanding. Thank you for that. Expertly said. I appreciate that. Next up, Miss Verly McCoy. She says the strong silent type often means that they are not in control of their thoughts, but you never know what they are feeling or what's on their minds. I can agree with that. I can agree with that. I think there are some people, and this is the thing I will add to that if I can. I think some people struggle with thoughts that lead to emotions, and they have taught themselves to be quiet because in the past, when they shared what they were thinking and or feeling, it was frowned upon or not even acknowledged or whatever that looks like. So I can definitely see how that can be a thing. But again, I'm stuck on the fact to where, and this has nothing to do with her statement, but I'm stuck on the tying together strong and silent. I just don't see how that became a thing. We never got anything accomplished in life with being silent. No person in our history has ever been, celebrated or whatever by being silent. They've been celebrated by the words that they said and the people that they moved. So I'm just trying to understand how that became a thing. So thank you for that, and I agree. I'm sorry, did I miss somebody? Okay, being silent is a method of learning and listening from the teacher that teaches and allow the man to vibrate at a higher level because he is silent. Okay, I got that. I can see that. Um, the journey. There we go. Is it possible that the strong silent type demeanor may stem from a preference for introspection, self-reliance, and calm approach to challenges rather than a desire to appear superior? I think you give men far too much credit. And I'm not trying to be funny. I said it jokingly, but I think in the midst of it, when they're in the like, let me kind of paint a picture. Let's just say a family, wife, husband, three kids, all school age kids. The oldest is, let's say the oldest is in middle school. Okay. So the youngest is like, elementary school, like fifth grade or whatever. And, 2 or 1 is the third. And so at the end of the day, kids are busy. And so kids going to do this. They're going to run around. They're going to have fun. They're going to jump around. They're going to, if they're upstairs, you're going to hear a lot of booming and crashing and all kind of stuff like that. And mom and daddy both work. So when they come home, mama's trying to make sure that everybody got something to eat, all that other great stuff. And, the man is doing whatever he is doing, whatever that looks like, whether he's watching TV, out cutting the grass, washing the cars, whatever. Doesn't really matter. But at the end of the day, let's just say that we're going to use the man in this particular scenario. The man has an issue with something that the kids are doing, right? But, and I don't know how women can do this. They can become completely tone deaf to what the kids got going on until something breaks. When something breaks, all bets are off. But let's just say the man, been going all day and kind of don't want it completely silent like the library, but wanted thinkable silence. And for whatever reason, they can't see eye to eye to that. And so they get into argument, discussion, whatever that looks like. I don't think at that point he is not going to have that conversation because he is doing some introspection and self-reliance and calming himself. I think he is not going to have that conversation because he don't want the beehive to show up when he enters into that conversation, especially being that mama has gotten to the point to where she can tone out those noises unless it's a different sound. And I can't put a finger. I don't know how to do it. They can just do it. But if it's a different sound, they know something happened, somebody got hurt, somebody broke something or did something of that nature. So that's just my initial thoughts. Gentlemen, what are your thoughts on this statement here?
I like that because sometimes the man doesn't want to say anything. Okay, we got Chris up in the house. The man doesn't want to say anything because of how he feels when he's speaking to the kids and she jumps in. So, and that's kind of usurping his authority. And so instead of them listening to him, he say, do this. And then she talking about, do what your daddy told you to do. Whereas I don't need you to reinforce me right now. Let them hear my words. And then let me get it out. And then if they don't do what I told them to do, I'm going to give them some encouragement. But with you coming behind me, making them do it, it's like you're in charge. And my words have less weight as yours.
I'm sorry, can I jump in real quick? Ladies and gentlemen, the man, the myth, the legend, our brother from another mother, hailing from the great state of Ohio, Mr. Christopher McClellan from across the table with Christopher McClellan, also known as Still the Angry Guy. Chris, how have you been, bro?
I have been well. I have been well. That's I've been well.
Well, I tell you what, it's good to have you back, bro. Good to have you back.
Thank you.
So I know you've been listening, so just feel free to chime in whenever you get ready. No pressure, no pressure.
Okay. I'll do that.
All right. Gentlemen, continue, please.
I'll jump in there. I don't think there's anything particularly wrong with the statement because it can be true at a moment, right? But I think the difference is from maybe from the way I'm viewing it, but is like just kind of like what you were saying, Coach. But I think it's when it disrupts my ability to have uh, the process to be introspective. To it destroys the process of me being able to calm myself and think about how things are. I can't sit down and my thoughts because there's so much chaos going on. And so now when we say I can't I can't tell the kids to sit down somewhere. I told them they can play a little bit. Well, let them go outside and play. Let them. Don't tell them they can't. So I don't disagree completely with the statement because I believe that there is a time, for men for that we do like to sit in silence. We like to collect ourselves, calm ourselves from everything else that's going on, and then you know jump into what's going on in the home.
Ro, Chris, your thoughts?
I don't got nothing. I'm gonna wait for the next question to roll around.
Okay. All right. Ro?
Man, I'm gonna wait because I'm kind of windy.
I got you. And like I said, no rush, Chris. Just take your time, bro. Let's move on to the next one. When a person is silent, does this mean that he or she has a deep-seated problem regarding anger, or do they just don't want to be involved?
I think it's kind of what we've talked about earlier, Coach. I think it could be both. I think sometimes, it could be because I used to get in a lot of trouble, right? So I would get in trouble, then I would get in trouble, and then I get rank taken and all these different things in the military, right? So I just learned how to be really calm and chill and relaxed and silent about certain things because sometimes when I would run my mouth, conflict would happen and then I would get in trouble. So when a person is silent, does it mean that he or she has a deep-seated problem regarding anger? And sometimes it is that. Sometimes it is because I know that if I get angry, we're gonna start moving some furniture around here. So it's better for me that I know myself. That's just going to be calm. I'm not going to engage with Gaddy because he said woo 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 about my hat. You know what I'm saying? And I think and there's something to be said is sometimes they just don't want to be involved too. But there is something to be said that you have had anger problems and it's gotten you in trouble, that you choose to tend to turn the other cheek, especially when you have your livelihood that's on the line.
I would say that's not a men or anybody in totality, but I think that sometimes it could be that the person is weighing the options, is listening more than they talk. Sometimes you got to listen. Everything doesn't need me to say something about it. Like, okay, you said this. Okay. It's not, see, sometimes people are looking for a reaction because they want a reaction from you, not because you have one. And sometimes people will give their reactions and what their 2 cents because they just want to add something, thinking they're adding value to the situation or the conversation. But when it comes to dialogue and communication or the back and forth, I think I would rather listen because I've been to anger management 3 times and I learned some things. Sometimes you just shut your mouth because if you have something to say, every time that person is talking, you weren't really listening to what they were saying. You were just waiting for your turn to talk. So sometimes that person just listens and waits for them to talk and they think, oh, you ain't gonna say nothing? I'm gonna wait till you get it all out because you running a mile a minute and I'm not trying to keep up with you. I'm trying to have a conversation.
Absolutely, man. So, I'm like you, bro. I've been to anger management a few times, and it's funny when you say that. Like every time I see Chris pop up and I see the angry man, still angry man, or angry but working on
You're
myself,
damn
you
right.
know, it's funny because that's how I was always classified. You know, always classified as an angry person, as a soldier, uh, as, even at the job now, because I just don't tolerate disrespect too well. Um, and that's just that's me, right? But I learned something about myself, right? And it was why I used to get so angry when I was younger, right? It wasn't just because I went through a lot. It wasn't just because we got taken we got taken from my mother and all that stuff. Yeah, that happened. But I realized I really get angry when what I am conveying is not properly handled, right? And that bothers me because I feel like if I'm discussing something with you and we're talking in circles away from everything that I'm saying, it gets frustrating. And then I got to keep going back in this. I'm not going to go in this circle with you. I'm either going to tell you, I'm either going to say, how about you shut up and listen, or I'm just going to stop talking because I know I'm going to tell you to shut up and listen, and that's not going to go over well. So and I'm not disagreeing or agreeing because you can be right. A part of it can be because there's a deep seated anger management problem. But why? Why so many young men growing up to be grown men being addicted to no one processing what they're saying and handling it properly? Why are we as men, as black men, conditioned to that reaction from on every hand? Why is it that we always feel like when I say something, you're not going to handle it right? So I'm gonna be quiet because you're right. I am about to get angry, so I'm just gonna leave it alone.
So are we saying, and I know you guys are responding to the question. For me, it seems like the needle is shifting. Okay. And I'm saying that for a particular reason. Here's why. Are we saying that the onus of effective communication is always on the listener? Because when I see this, right, and I do love this question, by the way, but when I see this, it says that when a person is silent. So the only reason I'm not talking, and I know that's not what she's saying, I'm doing this intentionally. The only reason I'm not talking is because I have a problem or I'm angry or I just don't want to be involved with y'all. That's it. And I think when we narrow it down to that, what we're saying is I'm a good communicator because I talk. You're not a good communicator because you don't respond. And then that in turn creates a narrative to where this person doesn't want to be involved, this person got an anger issue, or this person got a problem. And I and to where I do not believe, because I don't believe in absolutism, period. So I do not believe that this is absolutely null and void. I do believe that there are some people who got deep seated problems. There's some people who are just angry, and there's some people who just don't want to be involved with their families. But I don't think that's the norm. I don't think that's the majority. I don't think that's the rule. I think this would be the exception to the rule. I think the rule is that within our community, we don't understand communication in its totality. Some people open their mouth and talk and they think they're a good communicator because they can talk, but they're terrible listeners. Some people, all they do is listen and they don't voice what they're feeling and or thinking in response to what they're hearing. So they're terrible listeners. Therefore, communication is terrible within the household because you got one person who is excessively talking and then you got one person who don't talk at all. And therefore, communication, one person believes communication is happening and the other person is just not participating, where both are in error. If all you do is talk, let me say this again. If all you do is talk, try closing this for a second and listening. Just try to exercise. If you talk a lot and you know you talk a lot, and somebody has ever told you talk a lot, try not talking for an extended period of time and listen to what somebody say and then just repeat back to them what they said. So what I'm hearing you say is this. Don't have an opinion, don't have a judgment. Just say it in response. So what I'm hearing you say is this. You'll be surprised at what you can gather just by simply doing that. And so I love this question because again, I think this is how a lot of people think when it comes down to men. And these are the men, in my opinion, who are not in the home with their children for the most part. They think that's the answer. They're not in the children because they have a deep seated. They're not in the house because they have a deep seated problem. They have an anger issue, or they just don't want to be involved with their family. And the truth of the matter is, and I'm telling you because I know this from experience, some men get ran away from their house.
Ouch.
That's true. Because
As a former employee of the court system, I would have to agree.
And I've heard, oh, you can always talk to them, but you ain't never got nothing to say to me. Because you always talking bull crap. You always negative. You always yeah. So yeah, when it's that type of conversation where I can't get a word in, sometimes a person will say, I can't get a word in, so why am I even trying to talk? I'm not even gonna try. I'm just gonna bow out, run your mouth, get tired, go to sleep.
I can't hear you, Coach.
My bad. I'm just saying, I want to be clear. I'm not saying that that's what she's saying at all. Like I said in the beginning, I love this question because it really got after what I was wanting to get to eventually. But I know that's not how she thinks. But I think a lot of times what we need to hear is the extreme other side of it, where I'm rarely hearing anybody say anything about that.
And so I think exactly what you were saying earlier is why I went into the explanation, right? And I do like that you brought out that it started to sound like we're saying all the responsibility is on the listener, right? And that's absolutely incorrect. You're right about that. But when I see this question, and of course it's a text, so you can't really hear how it's being presented because it's typed. But normally when I hear this question asked, it's the perception of how they're seeing or they think the other person is processing. So a lot of times I hear people say, well, if y'all didn't have anger management problems, y'all wouldn't be quiet all the time. I'm like, well, that's your perception of why we're quiet, or that's your perception of why men are not there. That's your perception of why, he's practicing avoidance, right? But my question, and that's why I ended with the question is, why has it become the norm for men to begin to feel like this?
Because it's a reaction. It is a reaction. It is a reaction to the perception that we have been given that we need to shut up and take whatever we've been dealt. We're not allowed to talk. We're not allowed to have emotions. We're not allowed to feel. It's a reaction. We're adapting because we were never like this. This is a reaction to what everybody has been feeding us. This is why men shut up, and this is why it's Grand Theft Auto outside, because men ain't talking. So they're trying to find another way to get that out. And it always winds up being destructive. You know what happens when men don't talk? You turn into men like me, angry all the time. All the time. Because for years, we have been told to shut up. And if we say something, there's something wrong with us and not what we talking about. On top of that, and I put it in the chat, a lot of people don't understand the difference between talking about a behavior and talking about that person, because the behavior is so intertwined in who they are that they think that behavior is them. We know better. We do. We know better. And I'm going to say that till I'm blue in the face. We're smarter than this. We are. We're smarter than this.
Absolutely. I love it. I love it. So just put in the chat, that's our goal. It's our goal to get there. I can't promise it's going to happen on this episode, which means there might be a part 2. Just a little hint. And to Lisa's question, we're not saying all men, right? But absolutely. So that said, let's kind of press forward to the next question here. Because I think this is I think this is good. I think this is good that we start to unpack this. So, what are some of the most significant mental health challenges as a result of adhering to the strong silent type stereotype, and how do these challenges affect their lives and their communities?
I'm going to say that as with a lot of times when you have mental health, and when you've been strong and silent, you're probably adding an extra layer of stress into your life. When you're adding stress, then you have having mental health on top of that. I think that one of the things that it can cause is health problems. A lot of times what we go through mentally, a lot of times comes out in a physical sense. So where now we're talking about strokes, we talk about heart attacks, we talk about, gallstones, all of these other different things that we have that come from an extreme amount of stress that we're taking into our life because we're being silent about certain things that we should be able to talk about. So, and how do these challenges affect our lives and our communities? When your health is affected, it affects everybody around you. When you're being silent and you're holding everything in, and then you're dropping dead at 35 years old, and you got a wife and a couple of kids, like that ain't healthy for anybody around you. When and everybody have their time to go. However, you know what I mean? If we can eliminate some of these stresses, being men being and people being able to get things off of their chest, or have a wolf pack or a partnership, or people to be able to talk to, coaches, counselors, therapists, whoever to talk to, and open up and have conversations about things that affect us, then it would help our health, our physical health, which means that we can be around here to impact and to be impactful into other people's lives and into our community, whatever we decide our community is.
I would
I guess to
say
sum all that up, it was
that one of
physical
the major
health.
challenges is I would say one of the challenges is understanding the difference between strong and silent, meaning stoic, and strong and silent, meaning I don't say nothing. There is a big difference. You understand what I'm saying? So when I saw the title Strong Silent Type, I immediately thought strong, stoic. I'm thinking before I act, and I'm acting the way that I'm supposed to act instead of just not saying nothing. There's a difference. And I think one of the ways that the strong, silent, stoic type is actually what's necessary to me. But the quote unquote strong, I'm just not going to say nothing type, it's like when you boil water and you put a lid over it and it keeps boiling. At some point, the lid is going to fly off. And that's not something that I would wish on any community, for real.
Yeah. I had a response, but I'm like, I know the question, and it's not a negative response, but uh, I think, and I'm going more on board with what Unc said, because I think it creates a level of anxiety sometimes, right? Which can cause issues like increased blood pressure and stuff like that, right? So the health issues come in play. So when we talk about what mental health issues can can arise, it's like, just imagine having a bunch of men running around full of anxiety because they have so much stuff that's built up and held in, and untouched emotions that cannot be processed or expressed in their society, right? So you're dealing with built up anger and un unhandled emotions, because it's boiling inside of this silent, quiet person, right? That you say, and is easily mistaken for being stoic, right? Um, because both both exist in the same thing, in the same space, right? So it can be easily mistaken as being stoic, but it affects the community. Uh, to me, I agree on both ends. I agree with what Chris said earlier. You see how our men are in the streets acting, how they fighting, how they're doing all this stuff because the only outlet they have is their behavior outside of the home. You know, and it affect our community because our men are not vocal in the community. So when we say we need men to mentor, we need men to do this, we need men to do this, and sometimes it feels like why I'm mentoring this young man for him to go home and his mama reverse everything I said, everything I'm trying to teach him. I remember I tried to, get a young man out in the gym and go play ball with me, and his mom was like, "Just let he if you don't force him to be active. He's a homebody. No, you're a homebody because you keep him at home. Let him let him get out there. Let him get active. Let him interact with other boys, other men. Let him bump bodies and play basketball. Like don't be afraid of him having kind of okay. You take him out there and somebody hurt my boy, we're gonna dust him off, pick him up, and make him get back on the court. That's what's going, But so sometimes you get a lot of men who just retract from the idea of mentoring because they don't want to fight. They don't want to go through this back and forth. And it's like and I do believe it's conditioning, so I'll leave it right there.
I think some of the mental health challenges, Cassandra said anxiety and depression, and I agree, but along with that, some of those can be masked by substance abuse, whether it be alcohol, various drugs. People will start to use that to numb the pain, to dull their senses. And it runs rampant in our communities because of not being able to handle the stresses of life or the rigors of communication, the home life, not being able to provide and not having somebody, a wolf pack, as Unc said, people to talk to. So it definitely has an impact on our communities where it can be detrimental and with the way of drugs, alcohol, or just that stress, meaning that I'm just going to light on the next person I see.
I just want to add one point to what Roland said. Make no mistake about it. Sex is a drug. They will use sex just like they use alcohol, just like they use any other narcotic to mask that pain. Don't get it twisted. Okay, you was about to say something? Oh, okay. I'm just,
I ain't touching that one.
You ain't touching that? I'm just being honest.
Dude, but am I gonna touch it? Nope. But there is some validity there. Yeah, there's definitely some validity there, especially in the relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And can we say, by no means are we saying that there's justification for the behaviors that we
No.
see? I don't want nobody to get that mixed up. There's no justification, but I think somebody put in the chat about how do we fix it, but all fixes start with understanding and identifying the problem, and I think that's where we at right now. So
Absolutely. The first stage in fixing something is becoming aware that it exists. To this question, and I really like this question because I think we need to understand. No, not the previous one. I'm sorry. To this question, I really like this question because I think we need to understand what we're doing to one another. If you want to understand why you got people who are standoffish, people who don't want to do it, well, let's just be honest. If I grew up in a house and all I seen was argument, disagreement, this person arguing, this person cowering away in the corner, I don't want no parts of that. So I think, and I'm not saying that that's the reason why it is, but you have to understand that that could be a part of the concern. So when it comes down to like a lot of these mental health challenges, like you will have some depression. Like that's one of the biggest ones. You have depression about what's going on, a situation that may have taken place that person is recycling over and over and over again in their head. You'll have anxiety, like I think it was MJ that said. Good to see you, MJ. By the way, You'll have anxiety as well, to where they actually have, some future thought of some unwanted thing in the future that's going over and over and over and over and over again in their head. And some of that stuff is actually made up. It could be made up because they never even encountered that situation. But then, like, how do I talk to that person about this? How do I share this without it turning into a hornet's nest or whatever the case may be? um, and so all of that stuff leads to the physical aspects, like Uncle saying. One of the biggest ones is high blood pressure. Like, just think about it. Like, if you're constantly on edge in your own house and have that slow cortisol drip, that can lead to high blood pressure. You look at stuff like that. You look at ulcers, things of that nature. Ulcers can occur, and I think it kind of reminds me of, what is it, a Good Time show, episode of Good Times, where JJ had an ulcer because this woman he really liked, but she was, living a particular type of life that he didn't agree with, and he got an ulcer. And I got it. It was a TV show, but that's a real thing. Like, you can get an ulcer stressing behind another person, right? But then here is the other side of it. Here is one of the challenges of how it affects, like, lives in the community. Presence. Presence is not there the way it should be. So in that child's life, in that spouse's life, that person presence seems like it's null and void. They're there physically, but mentally they're someplace else. They're in their own little happy place because they're trying to maintain calm and take care of themselves in that particular moment. So they're not even there. They're there physically, but mentally they're totally someplace else. So now the child is missing out on the presence of the father. The spouse is missing out on the presence of the father. Family time is missing out on the presence of the father, because that person, and I don't want to say don't want to be there, but they don't want to be there under those conditions. And if the conditions were to change for the better, yeah, they'll gladly come back mentally. But at the end of the day, I don't want to argue. I don't want to fuss. I don't want to fight, because at the end of the day, it doesn't work out well for me. And I learned this when I was in the army. If the cops show up at somebody's house, somebody got to get in their car. I literally had an officer tell me that. He said, if I go in, he said, Sergeant Dwyer, he said, I'm gonna be honest with you. If I walk in the doors of that soldier's house, one of them got to come out in handcuffs. And he said, you know which one it's gonna be. I said, well, let me go in first and have a talk with him. Right? He said, okay, please. And he gave me that opportunity. And so I went in there and I kind of helped diffuse the situation. That's the thing that lingers over the man's head. I can't get into it with you like that, because at the end of the day, that system works on your behalf. They want me out the house. So all of that stuff is a thing that's going on in the psyche of that person. And that's probably one of the reasons why they just choose not to say anything. Thoughts? Any other feedback before we press forward? Man, I think we kind of got time for one more. Listen, I greatly appreciate. I know this conversation is kind of heavy. I get it. But again, I think it's just one of those important conversations. Let's kind of jump into breaking the silence real quick first before we take out. And let's jump into the now let's go to the second question. In what ways can embracing, I know I messed you up, I'm sorry. In what ways can embracing vulnerability and open communication enhance the quality of relationships for Black men? And I want to throw a hook in here first, and this may take us a little over. How can we get here? For starters, that's the initial part. How can we get to the part of vulnerability and open communication, right? And what positive changes can arise from this shift?
I think the main one is that understanding that having open communication doesn't make you a punk. How about we start there? Talking about how you feel and what's going on in your brain does not make you a punk. If anything, it makes you kind of strong, because you're not supposed to do that in the first place. So the fact that you got something in your gut and you got a feeling, that feeling is valid and it needs to be expressed. So say something. How about we start there? And you know what positive changes can come from that? More men saying something instead of going outside and destroying something because they can't say nothing. How about we start there? And I'm speaking as a product of that. I can't tell you how many people I've told to shut up while I was talking because I needed to get this off of my chest. I don't care about what names you're going to call me. I don't care about what temper tantrum you're going to throw. I don't care. If I have a gut feeling, then I'm going to express it and I'm going to be honest and righteous about it because I understand that me doing this is what's best for everybody. Because you don't want me to go down that other road. You will not like me when I am angry. You won't. So how about you let me get this off my chest now before it turns into something that it ain't supposed to be? How about we start there?
Has anybody else miss hearing Chris say "shut up" besides me? I'm just being honest, man. We missed you, bro. That's all it is. But no, I agree. Great response.
For me, I think it can create when you embrace vulnerability and open communication. I think what it allows for is for a deeper connection with the people that you're being vulnerable and openly communicating with. For example, the five men on this podcast, right? I think I've had conversations with I think almost everybody on here on the side minus I think one person. But I've had personal phone calls and we've shared personal information and we were able to be vulnerable with each other and we've had open communication and that has created a deeper connection with and deeper connection and trust with these gentlemen that are on this platform, tonight. So, and I feel or I think that if I needed to call on any one of these brothers, I've known everybody up here. I've never personally shaken anybody up here's hand before. You know, I met Coach through a mutual friend. I met Roland through Coach. I met Gaddy through Coach. I met Chris in a group on Facebook or somewhere on social media. You know, but because we have sat here, Wednesday nights and on Friday nights and had conversations and then had conversations, after the cameras go off, for me, it has helped me. It's helped my mental health. You know what I mean? Because I know that I have an outlet, if nothing else, every single Friday night to whereas someone can impart into me. So y'all think that this whole thing is just for y'all in the chat. Nah, this for us too. You know what I mean? We learn, we build off of each other as well. So and nothing but positivity and stuff like this. And right at the end, what positive changes can arise from this shift. I mean, look at us. You know what I mean? I think that if I needed any of my brothers up here for something, I honestly believe that they would extend their hand and offer it and help me out. So I appreciate all you guys for that. I know that wasn't part of the question, but
No, but that's what
Actually, that
vulnerability is
was
all
part
about.
of the question because that's
Yeah.
something that's a positive result. Like I said, I don't think any of us have been in the same state except for Roland and Gaddy. But we all know that we could pick the phone up and call anybody in this circle and say, "Hey, I got something on my mind and I need to share it." You understand what I'm saying? That's a positive.
And I think that's how villages and communities are built when men can connect. You know, I know in our community we're not used to seeing that dynamic. We're used to seeing it the other way around, right? But what are we building when we build villages and communities without men? We got a bunch of boys growing up, but we don't have men a part of that village. And yeah, because it's a part of the question. I'm gonna go there. And a part of you know, uh, when that man grows up, when that boy grows up and has his baby with one of the little girls in that village, somehow that man tends to get exiled out of the village, and the woman gets huddled around. And that's man. There's this show. What is it called? Uh, Paternity Court with the black female on
Mm.
there, right? And that in that episode when it came back that the man wasn't the father of the child that he fell in love with and was raising, and he stood there quiet, tears falling down his eyes. As soon as the girl on the other side fell out, his own mama walked away from his side to go nurture the woman. while he was in tears. And it's not saying that that girl didn't need support, but he did too, right? So, so when we start talking about building this village and and this positive interaction, because you're right, the only person on this panel that I've shaken hands with is Roland. Even though for some reason I feel like I've shaken hands with Coach, but obviously not, because in my mind he's 6'3", and he keep telling me he's not. Uh,
Right here, bro. Right here. That's from
you know,
6'3" at.
that's 6'3" to my hey, that's where it counts, right? But but I think what breaks what breaks the mold and allows us to start accepting vulnerability, right? We always say, and this is a mantra we hear everywhere, social media everywhere, that men need to learn how to lead. Men need to get back in their position. Men need to stand up and men saying it, and there's women out there saying it. But the first part, not the first part, some people might argue was first, but you can't lead with your mouth shut. You can't lead your home if you cannot express what the vision of the home is. If you can't express what the direction of the home is. If you're just there to make sure the bills are paid, I don't know what you are, but that's not we're not leading. So I think when we understand that, we begin to embrace vulnerability because we realize that our leadership, it comes out it comes out through our voice, it comes out through us speaking.
I love those responses. I think for me, I'm gonna start in the first place is just recognizing that, and it kind of goes back to what Chris says, in recognizing that vulnerability is available. It doesn't make you look weak. It's not a feminine characteristic whatsoever. It is a human characteristic. So being vulnerable is available for men. I got it. You may have never seen another man be vulnerable before. That does not mean that you can't be vulnerable. Being vulnerable simply means just being open, honest, and expressing yourself at the level of what you're thinking and feeling, and not necessarily passing judgment on what that other person might say or might think before you say it. Um, Open communication, again, that's a two-way street. I think too many times what we try to do is exercise control when it comes down to communication. And so what you really have within the space of conversation is um, kind of like a balance of power. One person's trying to have an authority over the other person when actuality in relationship, neither person has authority over either, right? They are given charge to do certain things within that relationship. It's kind of like the yin and the yang. You remove one and the other one is out of balance. And I think that's kind of like what it looks like. And so just in that alone, it will improve the quality of relationships because you are considering the other person in the midst of the conversation. So it may cause you to think about what you say before you say it. Listen, if you never heard me say this before, I'm gonna say it now, and you might want to write it down. If you have a problem with thinking about what you say before you say what you're going to say with to another person, then you just have a problem. It's not that other person's problem. We should be thinking about how we talk to other people. I think too many times we get into the space of complacency with people and we just think we're going to shoot from the cuff and say the first thing that comes to your mind. That is wrong. That is in error. If you think you can do that, trust me, you're going to run across a person and you're going to say the first thing that comes to your mind. And I promise you, when they respond, you're not going to like it. Embrace it. You deserved it. I'm just being completely transparent. And then it is what it is. And then the last part of this question was what was it? The positive, I missed it. Um, the positive change that can arise from this shift, a healthy family. That's the positive change. I am confusing myself if I believe I have a healthy family minus one of the other parents. That is a false assertion. It is a lie that has been embedded in your head to make you believe that that child minus parent, minus one parent equals a healthy environment. It does not. That child needs that balance. They need the yin or the yang. They need both of them together, right? So that's the thing. It lead, and then that alone, that healthy family, when you get a bunch of healthy families together, guess what they create? They create healthy communities. That's how it works. The foundation of the community is the family unit. If they destroy the family, they destroy the community. All you got to do is look around. It's everywhere. We claim community, but we don't know what community is because we struggle at the family level. So that's kind of like where I will go with that answer, because I think it's important for us to understand, men, it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to express yourself. It's okay to say how you feel, but you have to think about the person that you're talking to in the expression. Don't just, throw paint on the wall and see what, throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. No, that's not how it works. Think about how you want to say what you want to say, but be honest in what you're saying. Stop walking, tiptoeing like you're walking over eggshells. Get rid of all that bad stuff they told us before. It doesn't matter what anyone else told you about men and women, all of those were lies. Again, at the end of the day, men and women are supposed to become together to become one. It is impossible for them to become one when one cannot talk, when one cannot express themselves. So that's where I'm going to leave that at. Listen, I greatly appreciate everybody's comments, but like I said, I think this is going to be a part two. And these fine young men has proven themselves to do just that. Again, welcome back to my brother Chris, man. We've been missing you, bro. It's good to see you back. I'm liking the fullness of the chin hair, though. That's nice. I like that. I like that.
Thank you,
Listen,
sir.
for everybody else, we're going to dive into our final thoughts. Give me a second before we jump there. We're going to dive into our final thoughts. This young man's going to sit out because he's not feeling himself right now, but just his presence is enough. So with that being said, time for our bittersweet moment.
Ooh, man, this is a good conversation. I always think it's a good conversation when we make headway to bettering our community. And as Coach said, it starts with the family. Um, and I know for a lot of times, we're concerned about the children. One of the things I would say is that when our communication is better in the home, the children become benefactors of our our healthy communication skills, of our coexistence, of our cohabitation, of our loving each other. The children benefit. Just if I go to work and work hard so that I can provide something great for you because I love you and I care for you, guess what? The children benefit. They get to they get to absorb the same blessings we absorb from the relationship coming together. And so I say it's important that we create healthy spaces for one another, right? And that and I know in this chat we have a lot of people who are here to help break the mold, who are here to help better the community. I would even say to you, male and female, that you have to be vocal, and not just in the chats here, but we have to be vocal in the streets so that for those who we say are a part of our community can learn that there is important for us to create healthy spaces for each other so that we can communicate and we can move together. Yes.
My final thought is simple. Fellas, talk. Find somebody you can talk to and talk. It is necessary for you to talk. We need more of you to talk. Say something. Don't bottle that stuff up, man, because it's unhealthy and it can lead to something very, very bad for you. So talk. Don't make you a punk. It don't make you soft. It don't make you any of the shaming tactics that these people out here want to throw at you when you saying something. It doesn't. Talk. Say something. We need more of y'all to talk. We need more of us to talk. And we need more environments where we can talk. So yeah, that's my final thought.
As with anything, there's two sides of it. Um, there is a need for people to keep their mouth shut and to be silent about certain things. You know, we all have personal lives. We don't need to share every single thing that we have going on in our life with someone. The other side of that is there are plenty of times, there going to come a time to where you're going to need to share some information, and being silent about it and holding it in is not always the best answer. You know, we talked about, health health issues, high blood pressure, all of the different things that can come from holding things in that you don't need to. You know, we have to have balance in life, and to have to figure out what things we need to share and what things we don't need to share. Deeper communications can be built from sharing information and not being silent. You know, when you have a relationship with someone and both people don't have to be silent and they have the freedom to share and express themselves, it can be a wonderful thing. You know, so like Chris said, you know, everybody, you know, you need to find an outlet. You need to find somebody you can talk to. And if, I'm just saying, if you are a person who watched this show, kind of seems like there's a lot of believers that watch this show. So I'm just kind of saying, you always got somebody to talk to. So really no need to be silent. That's my final thoughts.
I love this community. I really do. I think when you listen wholeheartedly, you can hear that in these discussions, we are really for uplifting and building the community. Um, and I would say this: if you were the person who was listening to this and you felt like it was like a personal attack against women, then I ask you to search yourself, because at the end of the day, don't be the victim. Understand that we're speaking for the group. We're speaking for the betterment of the community, and I think that's the important part. We can't have a healthy community when the men in the community feel like they cannot express themselves and be completely transparent and honest. This is why men lie. I'm among other things, right? I got it. But this is why they lie, because they don't feel like they can tell you the truth. Well, why don't they feel like they can tell you the truth? Simply because at the end of the day, there was some explosion that happened when they tried to tell you the truth before. So look at why they're silent and then search yourself, right? Go to that person and talk to them. Say, I got it. Made a mistake back then, and I made a decision. It didn't work out well, and I can see how you're withdrawn. But let's try this again. Like sometimes I think that it within itself will help. Sometimes we got to be open and honest and sacrifice ourselves for the relationship that we're dreaming for long term. And a lot of us don't want to do that. We think that we're supposed to be the star of the show in the relationship that we got in our head. No, that's not how it works. No relationship works that way. Nobody wants to be in a relationship when one person is playing the leading actor or actress and the other person is just playing the background, like, I'll be around when you need me. No, let's not do that. Let's be better than that. Like we said earlier, the relationship is the most important person in the relationship. And if that is true, then both parties got to search themselves to ask themselves, what is the relationship requiring of me at any given point in time? And that's not just for one person to do, that's for both parties to do, men and women both. If we're ever going to come together, if we're ever going to unite, if we're ever going to have a strong community again, then we got to do better. And I believe wholeheartedly, and every person that hears this, that we can do better. But I need for you guys to believe right along with us. And that's why we're here every Friday night. So, that being said, we appreciate you guys. We value you guys. We think you guys are awesome. We appreciate you joining us every Friday night. Don't forget to join us on Tuesday night as well at 7 p.m. For Coach's Corner. On behalf of all of these brothers here, listen, you guys have a great rest of your evening. Have a fantastic weekend, and may the best version of yourself be a blessing to someone else.